Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Valerie Price, and I am 31 years old. He said, "Stop acting like we are married. You do not get a say in where I go or who I am with." Everyone laughed. I just smiled and stayed quiet. But when he came back from his weekend with his friends, his key did not work, and the neighbor told him exactly why. My ex-boyfriend, Maurice, and I had a fundamental disagreement about the nature of reality. No, I am not being dramatic. I believe that if you live in someone's house, eat their food, and use their Wi-Fi, you are in a partnership, a team. You are in it together. Maurice, on the other hand, behaved like he was a blazing sun, and I was merely a small planet sweeping endlessly in his orbit. We had been together for 2 years, and for the last 6 months of it, he had been living in my house. And when I say my house, I mean my house. My name is on the mortgage, my name is on the utility bills, and my name is on the bank statements that show my salary as a graphic designer is what pays for all of it. The down payment for this place came from a small inheritance my grandmother left me. This house is not just wood and drywall. It is her legacy. It is my sanctuary. Maurice moved in bit by bit. It was not a conversation. It started with a toothbrush, then a drawer. Then one weekend he brought a duffel bag, and it never left. At first it felt nice, cozy even. I would come home from a long day of deadlines, and he would be on the couch playing his video games. It was a presence. I mistook that presence for partnership. The truth is, I am a quiet person who enjoys my routines. I work from home, keep a tidy calendar, and have 2 close friends from high school who still come by for movie nights. My idea of a wild Friday night is trying a new brand of frozen pizza and watching a British detective show. I like things calm, predictable. Maurice was not like that. His life was a performance, and his audience was his 3 best friends, a constant chorus I privately called the brothers. Their names were Quentin, Donnell, and Jarvis. Quentin was the loud one, the leader. Donnell had that quiet smirk that said everything and nothing at once. Jarvis mostly went along. They were Morris's world, and slowly they started to become a permanent fixture in mine. I began feeling like a stranger in my own home. My quiet sanctuary became their weekend clubhouse. The little plaque by the front door, a gift Maurice bought early on, said the prices, which had once felt sweet and hopeful. Lately, as the sound of their shouting and controller buttons clicking echoed through the halls, that plaque just looked like a smug lie. It promised a life we were not building. We were not partners. We were coexisting, and I was paying for every bit of it. Living with Maurice was one thing. Living with Maurice and the brothers was something else entirely. It felt like I had 3 extra non-paying roommates I never agreed to, which is exactly what I had. My home, the place I had worked so hard for, turned into their default hangout. One Sunday I spent all morning deep cleaning. The floors gleamed. I set fresh flowers on the coffee table. The house smelled like lemon polish. I planned to read a book and simmer a chicken soup. At 4 o'clock I heard the key in the lock. Maurice came in with Quentin, Donnell, and Jarvis trailing behind like a parade, carrying beer and 3 large pizzas. "Babe, the game is on. Donald's television died, so we are watching it here," Maurice announced. He did not ask. He informed. For 4 hours, my living room was a war zone. They shouted at the screen. The surround sound rattled a picture frame. When I finally walked downstairs, the scene felt like the aftermath of a small storm. Pizza boxes open and sticky, bottles everywhere, and a dark soda spilled on the new rug I had bought after my last promotion. They were gone. No note. No apology. No cleanup. I spent an hour cleaning, my hands shaking with anger I swallowed, because I did not want to fight. When Maurice came home around 11, smelling like smoke and cheap beer, I tried reasonably. "Maurice," I said, gesturing to the living room I had rescued. "I love that you have your friends. But this is my home. I cannot be the one constantly cleaning these messes. Could you ask them to be more careful? Or at least help clean afterward?" He stared, then laughed as if I were recounting a ridiculous dream. "Valerie, come on. They're just guys. It is a little mess. What is the big deal?" I did not say that the big deal was me feeling like an unpaid housekeeper. I did not say the big deal was the disrespect. I did not say the big deal was him speaking like I was a guest in my own house. I just watched him kick off his shoes directly in the hallway and step over them, leaving them for me to trip over later. The space between us in bed that night felt like a cliff. I knew something had to give. The breaking point came on a Thursday. I was on a tight deadline, exhausted, simmering pasta sauce the way my grandmother taught me, garlic and basil softening in olive oil, tomatoes working themselves into velvet. Maurice swept into the kitchen already dressed to go out, phone to his ear, voice booming with the brothers on speaker. "Oh yes, I am in," he said. "A weekend at the lake is perfect." He turned away from me, laughed at something Quentin said, then added, "No, she is not coming." He ended the call and looked bright with triumph, as if he had just announced a bonus. "Good news. The guys and I found a cabin for the weekend. We leave tomorrow." This was the first I had heard of it. Not a discussion. A declaration. I stirred the sauce. "Which lake?" I asked, attempting normal. He looked at me like I had suggested we split atoms. The back door opened without a knock, as it always did for them. Quentin strode in, then Donnell and Jarvis behind him. Maurice tipped his chin toward me and said loud enough for the room to hear, "Can you believe this? She wants to know where I am going." Quentin looked me up and down like I was a countertop sample he had already rejected. Heat rose in my cheeks. Maurice turned back to me, put his hands on his hips, and delivered the line that became the catalyst for everything that followed. "Stop acting like we are married. You do not get a say in where I go or who I am with." They laughed. All of them. It was not nervous laughter. It was delighted laughter, the kind that punches downward. I stood there with my wooden spoon, watched a drop of red sauce fall to the floor, and felt a calm come over me so complete it was almost a relief. The part of me that made excuses and scrubbed the evidence of other people's choices quietly packed a suitcase, tipped her hat, and walked off into the night. I smiled. "You are 100% correct," I said, cheerful, agreeable, almost light. "My mistake." They laughed louder. Maurice patted my cheek like I was a kid who had finally learned a lesson. They swept out to find drinks before their trip. The house fell quiet except for the sauce bubbling on the stove. I turned off the burner. I walked through my house. I saw Morris's jacket on a chair, his pile of video games under the television, his shoes by the door. And I did not feel rage. I felt clarity. "Not married," I said to the empty room. No say. The plan formed quickly, like the sun rising. The weekend would be fun after all, just not for him. I went to bed early and slept like a stone. By morning, the decision felt so right it hummed in my bones. The second Morris's oversized pickup truck, no doubt packed with beef jerky and a cooler of light beer, disappeared down the street. I got to work. My first move was strategic. I walked next door. My neighbor, Mr. Henderson, is a widower in his late 70s, a retired high school drama teacher with a twinkle in his eye and a legendary collection of garden gnomes. He and his late wife, Loretta, were married for 51 years. After she passed from a long illness, I made a habit of checking in with cookies or porch chats. He once told me about his parents' chaotic separation when he was a boy and how it taught him that respect is not optional in a home. It is the foundation. Mr. Henderson also has the most effective neighborhood awareness I have ever witnessed. Nothing happens on our street without him knowing. I brought him warm chocolate chip cookies, and we settled onto his porch swing. We talked about the weather and the audacious squirrels that keep testing his garden fence. Then I said, "Mr. Henderson, I have a bit of a situation. It involves a small bit of theater." His eyes sparkled. The man loved drama. I told him everything, including Morris's exact words. "Stop acting like we are married. You do not get a say in where I go or who I am with." I did not embellish. The plain truth did the work. Mr. Henderson patted my hand. His voice slipped into that stage baritone he kept polished even in retirement. "That shameless young man, living under your roof, eating your food, and speaking with such disrespect. What do you need from me?" I gave him the script. When Maurice returned and found himself locked out, Mr. Henderson would act confused and deliver a few key lines. He wrote them on a little notepad. "Found his freedom. A woman's home now," he murmured, delighted. "This is delicious, my dear." With my accomplice in place, I walked home wearing a real smile for the first time in weeks. Then I began Operation Reclaim My Space. I did not just pack Morris's things. I curated them. I bought a dozen heavy-duty boxes, a mountain of packing paper, a thick black marker, and disposable gloves for the stickier corners of life. This was not only about cleaning. It was about reclaiming each square inch. I started in the bathroom. Into box 1 went the half-empty bottle of musky cologne he loved, the electric razor, and the tower of hair products that promised transformation and delivered grease. I labeled it, grooming and assorted gels. The bedroom came next. His side of the closet was a topographical study of wrinkled t-shirts and jeans with complicated stains. I did not fold. I scooped. I packed. The first bedroom box, everyday clothes mixed condition. The second, sneakers, rare and otherwise. He had an impressive collection of fancy shoes he could afford. Rent, apparently, he could not. I wrapped his baseball caps, 15 in total, and labeled the bundle. Hats for every mood except accountability. I found a shoebox at the back of the closet full of ticket stubs, wristbands, and Polaroids with the brothers. I paused, looking at a photo of Maurice with Quentin and Donnell, all of them grinning, arms thrown over shoulders, a night that had likely spilled into day. There was one of us too early on, when I believed we were building something. I held that picture for a heartbeat, then set it at the top of his memory box with care. Not every truth needs to be sharp. Some simply need to be put away. The living room was the greatest test. His video game console, a neat stack of games that had slowly become a tower, the tangle of controllers and cords, all carefully wrapped and labeled, entertainment equipment. His collection of heavy gray throw pillows went into a box, neutral pillows in excess. I cleaned the television stand, and for the first time in months saw the grain of the wood. Morris's paperwork lived in a kitchen drawer. I found stray envelopes, a gym contract he had never read, and a brochure about a business idea he talked about but never started. I stacked it all in a file folder, personal documents. I felt oddly generous. By Saturday morning, every trace of him was boxed and stacked neatly by the door. It looked like a small cityscape made of cardboard, each label a street sign. I hired 2 movers from an app, and they arrived early, polite, and efficient. They carried without comment. We took everything to a 10 by 5 foot storage unit 7 miles away. I paid for 1 month up front. That felt generous too. I locked the door, took a photo of the unit number and the keypad code, and slid the little orange lock shut. With the house empty of Morris's presence, the rooms felt like a quiet field after snowfall. The air was brighter. The light fell differently across the floor. I opened windows. The curtains breathed. I did not stop at removing. I replaced. I sold Morris's black leather sofa online to a college sophomore who showed up with a friend and beamed the entire time. "This is perfect," she said. "My roommate will scream." I wished her well, then closed that door. In its place, I bought a large sectional in deep emerald velvet that felt like a hug. I found it at a local furniture store where the owner, a woman named June, said, "If you fall asleep on this twice, do not blame me. It is dangerous." His metal coffee table was traded for a reclaimed wood piece from an artisan market across town. The surface had small nicks and stories in it. I put art books and a vase of sunflowers on top. The room softened. I took down the framed posters of grim action heroes, patched the nail holes, and hung vibrant abstract paintings from local artists I follow. Then I rolled on a warm, sunny yellow paint across the accent wall. The room brightened as if someone had opened a window in the sun. The bedroom transformation felt like exhaling. I replaced heavy blackout curtains with light linen ones that let morning arrive gently. Above the bed, I hung a large woven wall piece I had admired for months. I bought a duvet with a bold pattern and pillows that supported more than an opinion. I added a soft rug beside the bed. The kitchen belonged fully to me again. I rearranged the cabinets and donated duplicate items that had arrived with Maurice like uninvited guests. I bought a bright runner for the floor and put my grandmother's framed handwritten recipe for peach cobbler on a small easel on the counter where I can see it. I played music while I worked, jazz in the morning, a little old soul by afternoon, and the windows carried the sound onto the porch. Mr. Henderson waved from his steps, then, with theatrical gravitas, pressed one finger to his lips as if to say, "Patience. The second act is coming." By late Saturday afternoon, the house looked like me again. Not a we, not an us, certainly not a his. It was mine. Warm. Bright. Certain. And there was one more thing I wanted to add, not a person, but a presence. I drove to the local animal shelter on the edge of town. I told myself I was only going to look. The volunteer at the front desk, a kind woman named Brielle, handed me a visitor sticker and led me down a hallway lined with clean kennels. The air hummed with soft barks and the metallic tap of tails against gates. I saw big dogs and small dogs, puppies vibrating with energy and older dogs with patient eyes. Then I reached the last kennel and stopped. A large Bernese mountain dog with a glossy tricolor coat lifted her head slowly, as if to avoid startling me. Her card said Daisy, 2 years old, surrendered due to apartment restrictions. She is gentle, Brielle said. Housebroken. Loves people. She does not demand, she leans. Can I meet her? I asked. In the visiting yard, the door opened and Daisy ambled out with deliberate grace. She walked straight to me, leaned her entire weight against my legs, and tilted her head up as if to say, "We are doing this, yes?" I put both hands in her thick fur and exhaled. We played fetch badly. She preferred to carry the ball in her mouth while I chased her. And then we sat in the shade. A little boy on the other side of the fence asked if he could pet her. Daisy leaned into his small hand, eyes soft. I looked at Brielle and nodded. I would like to adopt her. An hour later, Daisy lay stretched across the back seat of my sedan like a queen traveling in secret. She watched the trees pass, panting gently, then settled her head on the center console, the weight of it warm against my elbow. At home, she explored every room, sniffed every corner, and located the kitchen water bowl with the skill of a seasoned traveler finding a hotel ice machine. She leaped onto the new emerald sofa, circled 3 times, and fell asleep snoring like distant thunder. I spent the rest of the evening playing in the backyard and changing all the passwords. The new Wi-Fi network name was Pay Your Own Bills. The password was Not Your Wife LOL, which made me snort laugh as I typed it, then made me feel giddy that I no longer had to pretend my life was a committee. On Sunday evening, I cooked a dinner Maurice would not have touched, roasted salmon with lemon, buttered asparagus, and garlicky couscous, and ate on the couch with Daisy's head heavy in my lap. The house was quiet. I was not. Inside, I was a choir. Around 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a notification from the video doorbell. There he was, Maurice, sun-browned from a weekend at the lake, sauntering up the walk humming. He slid his key into the lock, twisted, and frowned. He twisted again. The new deadbolt I had installed that morning did not know him. He jiggled. He huffed. He put his shoulder into it. Then he knocked. Then he pounded. Daisy lifted her head, gave one deep, conversational bark, and went back to sleep. My phone rang, Maurice. I watched it vibrate on the coffee table, declined the call, and took a sip of wine. It rang again. Declined. Again. Declined. The pounding escalated. His voice arrived through the door. Valerie, open the door. What is wrong with you? And bounced around the hallway. I let him wear himself out for a few minutes. He paced. He tugged the doorknob as if tantrum energy were a key. When he finally paused, the porch light next door clicked on. Mr. Henderson stepped out in his house coat, holding a small watering can as if the hydrangeas required midnight attention. "Oh, Maurice, is that you?" Mr. Henderson called, performing surprise with the ease of a man who taught high school seniors to inhale Shakespeare. Maurice turned toward the voice, relief flashing across his face. "Mr. Henderson, thank you. My key is not working. Is Valerie home?" "The lights are on." Mr. Henderson leaned over his railing. "Valerie is home," he said with warm authority. "She has had a marvelous weekend. A real transformation." "Transformation?" Maurice echoed, confusion creeping in. He looked back at the door as if it might volunteer to explain. "She told me the good news," Mr. Henderson continued, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "You two are not married. She does not get a say in what you do. So she decided to celebrate her freedom." Maurice stared. He looked, for the first time since I met him, like a man with no compass. "She redecorated," Mr. Henderson went on, eyes twinkling. "Said it is a woman's home now. Vibrant." He paused, savoring the moment, then delivered the line he had been practicing. "And she got a dog. A great big, beautiful girl named Daisy. Said she wanted a companion who is loyal and does not talk back. Sweet, is it not?" I watched from the couch as Maurice pressed his face to the living room window. He took in the emerald sofa, the warm light, the colorful art, and the giant sleeping Bernese occupying the place where his leather throne had once been. He made a sound like a crack in a winter lake. His texts arrived in a sprint. "What did you do? Where is my stuff? Let me in now." I let him pace the porch while I composed my reply. Then I typed, "You said to stop acting like we are married. You said I do not have a say. I agree. This is my house, and you do not have a say in how I live in it." I continued, "Since we are not married, I returned your property to a secure location. The address is 2301 Storage Lane, Unit 42. The code is 1-2-3-4. You have 1 month. Have a great life. Then I blocked his number and his social accounts. Through the doorbell camera, I watched him read the text, read it again, then throw his phone into the yard like a child tossing a toy he never learned to share. It landed in the grass with a dull bounce. He ranted for another 10 minutes, pacing, tugging at his hair, punctuating the night with half-sentences and expletives I did not need to hear to know. Eventually a car pulled up, Quentin's sedan, the passenger window stuck half open like a permanent shrug. Maurice yanked open the door, scowled at the house one last time, and slammed himself inside. The car rolled away down the dark street. I sat very still for a moment and listened to the only sound that mattered, Daisy snoring her contentment into the pillows. The next morning, I woke to sunlight and a silence that felt like a blessing. I made coffee and took Daisy for a long walk around the neighborhood. Mr. Henderson waved from his lawn. "Your first act was brilliant," he called. "Let me know if you need me for the sequel." "Thank you, Director," I said, smiling. Daisy wagged at him as if they had rehearsed together. The brothers launched their predictable digital campaign by Monday afternoon. There were vague posts about betrayal, sad black and white selfies, and quotes about cutting out toxic energy. Their followers left little pockets of sympathy like care packages on a roadside. I did not respond. I let the story stretch out on its own until it became too thin to hold. Then I posted a small private album visible only to mutual friends. The before living room with its leather couch and gray pillows. The after with the emerald sofa, the colorful rug, the warm light, and Daisy sprawled magnificently across the center. The final photo was me and Daisy, smiling like we had been let out of something. The caption was simple. Decided to redecorate based on my new relationship status. The effect was immediate. The sympathy sands shifted. Friends who had been quiet reached out privately. "Are you all right? That room looks incredible. Also, Daisy is regal." My two best friends, Tashina and Elise, arrived that evening with flowers and a bakery box full of miniature tarts. Elise walked into the living room and said, "Oh, you are dangerous when you are free." Tashina knelt to greet Daisy. "Hello, Your Majesty." We ate tarts on the coffee table and talked. I told them about Thursday in the kitchen. How they had laughed. How Maurice had patted my cheek. Elise's eyes flashed. "I wish I had been there," she said. "I would have applauded after your line." The next weekend, Morris's mother left a voicemail on my work phone. A number she should not have had and yet did. Her voice was tight with concern and something like rehearsed politeness. "Valerie, this is Mrs. Jordan. I heard there has been a misunderstanding. Maurice needs to collect some things." I forwarded the voicemail to my lawyer, Sarah, a calm, meticulous woman who finds joy in bullet points. Sarah called me within the hour. "I will handle it," she said. "Also, I laughed out loud at your Wi-Fi password." 2 days later, a letter arrived from a lawyer representing Maurice, stern and thinly threatening. It demanded immediate access to my house for reclaiming wrongfully held property and suggested that by changing the locks, I had rendered Maurice homeless. Sarah sent a response with a copy of my mortgage statement, utility bills, and a polite question about whether Maurice planned to reimburse me for 6 months of rent, utilities, and food. We never heard from his lawyer again. By then, Maurice was staying on Quentin's couch, which lasted less than a week. It turned out that Quentin's girlfriend had her own boundaries. When Maurice complained loudly about the early morning blender, she told him, "This blender is a permanent resident. You are a guest." From what I heard, he relocated to his parents' house 3 hours away. Life clicked into a new rhythm. I learned Daisy's language. The soft huff when she wants the window open, the heavier sigh when she wants me to put my laptop down, the remarkably gentle tap of a paw when she wants to sit directly on my feet. She followed me room to room like gravity. I worked on a big design project that had kept me awake in spirals before. Now, with the house quiet and the boundary lines visible, ideas arrived like polite guests. I would close my computer at 6, cook dinner, and watch the sky dim from the living room. Daisy stretched like a bridge between us and the evening. One afternoon at the shelter's alumni day, I took Daisy for a photo with the volunteers. Brielle hugged her and said, "You look right at home, girl." Daisy wagged, then leaned her entire left side against my calf, as if to say, "Yes, this is mine too." About a month after the lockout, I was at the dog park when someone hovered near my bench. I recognized him only after a second, Jarvis. He looked sheepish, hands in his jacket pockets. "Valerie." "Hello, Jarvis," I said evenly. Daisy was busy with a tennis ball and her personal project of trying to fit 2 into her mouth at once. I wanted to say I am sorry about that night, he said. We were out of line. I did not say anything. I should have. I grew up watching my mother do everything while other people laughed. I should have known better. I nodded, and the wind moved in the trees. Thank you for saying that. He stared at his shoes. Maurice called me last week. He is mad. He says his parents want him to get a real job. He says it is your fault. He huffed a humorless laugh. I told him it is wild to blame the person who paid for his life for 6 months. He glanced up. You look good. You look quiet. I am, I said. Daisy is a good roommate. Daisy, as if on cue, dropped one tennis ball in my lap and kept the other clamped in her teeth, pleased beyond reason. After he left, I sat on the bench and watched Daisy chase a leaf caught in the wind like it was the most important meeting of the day. I remembered how small I had made myself to keep Maurice comfortable in a life that was not mine. I had done so carefully, folding myself neatly into corners. I had been good at it. That night, I put on one of my grandmother's old records, a little crackle, a clean horn, and cooked a peach cobbler from her recipe. The smell lifted the house. Mr. Henderson called to ask if I had made something that required taste testing. I brought him a warm slice on a plate, and we sat on his porch, talking about stage directions and second chances. He told me Loretta had once told a neighbor, "Respect is not what you say when everyone is watching. It is what you do when no one is looking." She would have liked you, he said. I would have liked her, I said. Daisy lay at my feet like a furry ottoman. The evening softened around us. Days set themselves one after the other. Small things became large. The morning sun printing squares on the rug, the plant by the window growing new leaves, the quiet hum that lives in a room when it is arranged by love instead of control. I bought fresh flowers and set them in a glass pitcher. Sunflowers, then tulips, then hydrangeas like handfuls of cloud. The brothers went quiet online. It is hard to maintain a victim narrative when the supposed villain is busy posting photos of a dog asleep on a green sofa and bowls of stew on a reclaimed wood table. Friends began inviting me out again, and I began saying yes. One Friday, Elise insisted on a movie at the theater downtown. On the way out, we walked past the shop window of a local painter I love. A small canvas in the corner held orange and gold brushstrokes tumbling into one another like laughter. You should buy it, Elise said. I did. I hung it in the hallway where the light touches it in the afternoon. Every time I pass, I think of how light changes everything it touches. Not just what it looks like, but what it is allowed to be. A month later, a postcard arrived from Maurice. On the front was a boat on a lake. The back had 3 sentences. I want to talk. You overreacted. We can fix this. I set it on the counter, looked at it while Daisy drank water with her charming lack of delicacy, then dropped it into the recycling bin. On a Saturday morning, my mother visited for the first time since the change. She walked slowly through the living room, touching the back of the sofa with the palm of her hand, looking at the paintings, at Daisy, at my face. When you were little, she said, you always lined up your crayons by color. That is not about neatness. It is about seeing and honoring what belongs where. This looks like you, baby. I hugged her and smelled her citrus perfume and felt my shoulders drop a fraction of an inch. The way shoulders do when someone who loves you tells you that you are not imagining things. Later, we took Daisy for a walk. On the way back, Mr. Henderson waved us over to show off his newest garden gnome, a miniature conductor with a tiny baton. For calling the cues, he said with a flourish, winking at me. My mother laughed and told him he should come over one day and teach me how to project my voice from the diaphragm. He promised a lesson in exchange for another slice of cobbler. The seasons tipped forward. Work stayed demanding but not devouring. I set boundaries and kept them. I learned to end my day when the day ended. I learned the thrill of an empty calendar square. I learned how good it feels to shut a door because I wanna, not because I am trying to keep something out. One evening, a storm rolled in with a dramatic sky. The lights flickered. Daisy walked to the window and sat like an attentive citizen watching the world shift. The thunder shook the house once, then again softer. When it passed, the air smelled like relief. I made pasta sauce from scratch and tasted it with a wooden spoon. I thought of that Thursday and the drop of red sauce hitting the floor. I thought of the silence that came after. I thought of how quickly I had known what to do the moment I finally listened to myself. Sometimes the best revenge is not revenge at all. It is believing people when they tell you who they are and then making choices that honor who you are. Maurice told me exactly how he viewed our life. I believed him. I agreed with him. And I walked. On a bright Sunday, I hosted a tiny housewarming just for me, Daisy, and the women who have always shown up. We ate fruit salad and quiche, and I handed out little cards with our Wi-Fi details because everyone asks eventually. When they saw the network name, they laughed from the chest. "You are not subtle," Elise said, delighted. "I am not interested in subtle," I said. "I am interested in clear." After everyone left, Daisy and I sat on the porch steps. A cardinal landed on the fence, bright as a word you cannot unread. The house behind me hummed like a tuned instrument. The world felt newly arranged. In the months that followed, there were small echoes. A text from a mutual friend saying Maurice had a new job interview. A rumor that he had apologized to his sister for taking her car without asking. A photograph of him and his father at a backyard grill where he looked like a man realizing the work was his to do. None of it was mine to manage or fix. I wished him enough wisdom to keep from burning himself again. Then I turned back to my life. One night, as I was making tea, the doorbell rang. It was Mr. Henderson with a folder. "These are old playbills," he said. "I have been sorting. I found a quote that fits you." He opened the folder and pointed. The line was circled. "I am not afraid of storms, for I am learning how to sail my ship." "Thank you," I said, throat tight because some sentences arrive right on time. "Loretta loved that one," he said, smiling at the memory like it was in the next room. After he left, I taped the line inside the pantry door, so I would see it each morning when I reached for coffee. Daisy rubbed her head against my knee, and I told her she was the best first mate a woman could ask for. She sneezed, which I took as agreement. The house at night, with the lamps on and the hallway painting aglow, feels like the life I meant to live before I got distracted by a single star performing brightness for an audience hungry for heat. What I have now is quieter. It does not demand. It does not laugh at my questions. It listens when I speak. I learned that partnership is not presence and certainly not audience applause. Partnership is respect. It is a conversation that never forgets what house we are standing in and who paid for the walls. Maurice told me we were not married and that I had no say. I agreed with him. I stopped acting like I was married to a man who did not treat me like a partner. I stopped handing over the microphone in the home I bought with my grandmother's legacy. I moved his life into a 10 by 5 foot space with a metal door that locks, and I bought a sofa the color of a jewel, and a painting that gathers sunlight, and a rug that remembers my feet, and a dog who treats every day like a promise kept. I did not take anything from him that he did not tell me to take by refusing to give it back when I asked for respect. I returned exactly what was his, and I claimed exactly what was mine. Some evenings, when the air is soft and the light outside leans toward gold, I open every window and let the house breathe. The curtains lift and sigh. The floor creaks the way old floors do when they are happy. Daisy sprawls, taking up an unreasonable amount of space, and I let her. She is not a lesson. She is a reward. If you ask me what freedom looks like, I will point to the emerald sofa, and the painting in the hallway, and the recipe on the counter, and the woman at the stove tasting sauce with a wooden spoon, and the dog whose gentle snore steadies the room. Freedom looks like receiving the life you built as if it were always meant for you, because it was. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.